Hello, everyone. It is 2 o'clock, so it is about time for us to get started. If all of our panelists could turn on their cameras, that would be great. It is wonderful to see everyone. My name is Lillian Dejean. I am the Senior Coordinator for the Governor's Office of Disability Affairs. And first, I think it'd be great if we could start out for some introductions for our Father's Perspectives on Disability panel. Harlan, would you like to go first?
Sure. My name is Harlan Kauser. The second, my daughter is Carly Kauser. Carly has a condition called aniridia, which the main symptom is blindness. I work as the adult program coordinator with Families Helping Families of Acadiana, and I also work as the disability coordinator with the Mayor President's office in Lafayette.
Thank you so much, Harlan. Rashad.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Rashad Bristow. I'm the parent of a son. He's 16 years old. He's on the autism spectrum. He's nonverbal. He's mild moderate. Also, me, myself, I was born with a disability. I was born with one arm, and self-advocate and current charge of DD counsel as well.
We're so happy to have you, Rashad. Thank you. Mike?
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michael Billings. I am the father of 2 adopted children with developmental disabilities, adopting the 3rd this coming Friday, and foster parent of another child with developmental disabilities. Former member of the Disability Council, former member of the Executive Committee of the Disability Council, and currently member of the State Interagency Coordinating Council for Early Steps.
Thank you, Mike. And last but not least, Beau.
How you doing? My name is Beau Brooks. I am the father of Spencer, who is 6 years old. He has Down syndrome. I am the co-founder of an organization called Upside Downs. And also I'm an attorney in my day job. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. So our first question today is there anything that you've been able to teach dads of non-disabled children that you've learned from parenting a child with a disability? And Harlan, I'm going to ask you to go first.
Sure. Probably the biggest thing would be the importance of patience and high expectations. I think that being the parent of a child with a disability really gives us an education in the necessity of patience, especially when so frustrating and we have so many questions in the beginning. But learning to be patient, to take your time, to have high expectations and reasonable goals, I think those would be the most valuable things that I could share.
Thank you so much, Harlan. Rashad, would you like to go next?
Yes, one of the things I've learned and things that I pass on is just not to draw conclusions so fast. I'm agreeing with Harlan. A lot of it is to be patient and just be inquisitive. I was talking to a parent one time, like with my son, sometime with him being nonverbal, unfortunately, sometimes it's more of a guessing game. And you have to do the process of elimination to find out what may be the issue, but not to become over frustrated, but to exercise patience and just be inquisitive to find out what you can, what the process of what the provocation for concern may be.
Thank you so much. And I think you bring up a great point about individuals who are nonverbal. I think a lot of people make assumptions on ability and disability for individuals who are nonverbal, and when instead, really, you should go in with that open, inquisitive mind about what their potential really is and what their capabilities really are. So, Mike, would you like to go next?
Sure. I would say one of the things that I often address is dads that say, "I don't know how you do it," and my response is, all dads do it, just in different ways. if your child is born with a disability or you adopt a child with a disability, you do for that child just like you would your child or children without disabilities. The other thing, as everybody's communicated, is patience, communication. When you're in the presence of somebody with a disability, don't ignore them. Speak as if they are there. I have a daughter who is blind, who also has developmental disabilities. And, often people are looking at the parent and talking to them about the child who's sitting there and not, even though they can't participate in the conversation, you don't act as if the child is not there. That's always a pet peeve of mine. And I try to address that with anytime that situation comes up. You can talk to my daughter, Casey, talk to her as if she is in the room with us because she's here, and when we talk to our children with disabilities, I'm sure everyone else does, just like you talk to everybody else in your household. And that's the thing I often try to pass along. Thank you.
You mentioned this phrase of I don't know how you do it. And I've heard a lot of parents say that they are told that about their children with disabilities. Do you feel like there's more commonality than people think of raising a child with a disability versus maybe a non-disabled child?
I definitely do. I mean, you may have to do more for a child with disabilities as far as their day-to-day tasks. For example, I have a child that can't feed herself, and that has to be done for. But like I said, if you have a child with a disability and a child with an ability, we have a normal child with a teenager now with no disabilities, and we don't treat him any different than the ones with disabilities. So you just tend to, if you're in that situation, you do it for your children in any circumstance, as you would a normal child or a child with disabilities. You're going to do whatever it takes.
Thank you, Mike. And Beau, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, when I first saw that question, Lillian, I was a little kind of, I guess, confused about it. And I just jotted down some notes, and Harlan, I think, stole a lot of our thunder by hitting patience. And I wanted to add compassion. But I guess the problem I've struggled with this question is because I don't actually see myself teaching other dads who have children that don't have disabilities. I interact with a lot of fathers who have a child with Down syndrome specifically, but I guess it's the unintentional teaching that we do as parents. And that comes by the way of bringing my son around them as much as possible and putting my son in front of other families and letting them witness the interaction and letting them see the things that we have to do on a daily basis that they may not have to do with their children. And that's how it ties into the whole patience and compassion. A lot of times I'll have some friends over, they'll come hang out, and I can't just sit and visit because I'm running around the yard chasing Spencer because he's trying to get out or run, something like that. So I think that there's some additional teachings that go on when my friends or other dads are able to come and witness how my wife and parent Spencer when they're around. I'm gonna have to move. It's saying my internet's unstable. I'm gonna get a little bit closer to the Wi-Fi and come right back.
Okay, Beau, no worries. It's funny because what Beau said about just being around other families really echoes a conversation that I had with someone the other day about empowerment for people with disabilities. And someone asked me, like, what does empowerment look like for people with disabilities, right? And in my experience in the disability community, it's not necessarily like a give and take one-time event, right? Where, you have one person with the disability that deems the other person with the disability empowered or ready to be self-determined, but rather it's this give and take experience of being around other people who are empowered and who are also living a self-determined life and spending that time with other people and learning from their experiences. So there's that, I feel like there's that commonality there. So moving on to our next question, it would be, what's the biggest challenge, but also the biggest reward that you face on a day-to-day basis as a father of a child with a disability? And Rashad, I'm going to ask this question of you first.
Well, the biggest challenge for me is to make sure that I'm equipping my son to be able to live independently when I'm no longer in a position to be a support system to him. I get that feedback when I know that he fulfills some of the tasks that I may ask of him to do, and to also be able to just function in a way that I know that I don't have to have the concerns where if he's out of my sight, that something may be going wrong. For example, if he goes into his room, or I go tell him to go get dressed or whatever the case may be, I'm fortunate where he's able to fulfill those tasks. But to answer your question is basically try to make sure that he's equipped where when I'm no longer to be able to be in the picture of support, that I know he's able to sustain himself or be around others who are willing to help him keep the retention of what's been taught to him through me.
Thank you, Rashad. And do you think your goals for your son, some of that a result of being a person with a disability yourself? Do you think your experience as a person with a disability directly impacts your goals for your son?
It does. I think it's interesting because me growing up with a disability, I can relate because I remember how the feelings were when I was growing up, when being ostracized or not being included, which gave me a better chance of having an understanding of with my son when he wanted to do something that he may not have been considered acceptable. Now, with him being on autism spectrum, my son is not exactly one that was very sociable. But at the same time, it's just, I find it easier to relate due to the fact that I have a disability, he has disability. And then even in my whole family dynamic extended and now everyone's more accepting of him because I think I was the icebreaker in the process for the whole acceptance into disability and becoming a lot more accepting, sentimental, and understanding of the process.
Thank you, Rashad. And Harlan, I'd love to get your thoughts on this.
Well, the biggest that I face with my daughter, she's about to be 11 years old. And the biggest challenge that I really face right now with her is trying to manage the impacts that other people's attitudes and opinions about her disability seem to come up a lot. Kids at school, she's always kind of singled out and different because she has to have specific accommodations that separate her from everyone else. And kids notice that. Sometimes she gets teased for it, but she always feels singled out in some way. As she said, even when they pass out work in class, hers has to be either in large print or in braille, or she has to use special equipment. There's always something that separates her from her peers. And then trying to deal with some of those impacts to her self-esteem and self-image and self-confidence. And then as far as the greatest reward, really the greatest reward is having those moments when she recognizes her true ability to do things despite of what everyone else has said or thinks. And for the first time, she really has that opportunity to see herself succeed. That's always the best reward.
It must be really challenging to be raising a child during that age where their peers' opinions, matter so much, especially when you have that added layer of disability. I remember whenever I was like 11 or 12 or 13 and in school and having to leave class to go to the nurse's office to take meds and just being bombarded with questions. And it's like, that's the age where you want to not be different, where you just want to blend in and make friends and be like everyone else. And navigating that with that extra layer of disability that seems to almost, and overpower anything else about your identity is really, really hard, especially when there's lack of awareness about disability among your peers. So, Beau, I would love to hear your thoughts on this about the greatest challenges and greatest rewards.
Oh, let me just first preface it by saying that I believe that those challenges continue on as our children grow, and that, I'm at a stage now where my son is only 6. And so some of you guys watching, the attendees that are watching, you've probably well beyond that age, but some of my challenges are a lot different and may not seem as serious to everyone else, but I can only deal with what I've been given so far. So with regards to a daily challenge, I think, everything that we do as a family always requires additional planning and additional time and more steps. And it's not as easy as just picking up and going and maybe staying in a hotel room, or, there's so many things you have to think about. And even as far as when you go to other family members' houses for Christmas or holidays and things like that, we've got so comfortable in our own home by making it a safe place for Spencer to be able to maneuver around without harming himself or getting hurt. But other people's homes are not set up like that. So, we go to a family member's house for Christmas, and it was so stressful that it made it going not even enjoyable anymore. And it made the holidays not fun because you're constantly on your toes, having to watch him, make sure he's not putting himself in harm's way. So particularly what we're dealing with now on a daily basis is the whole potty training issue. That is one of our biggest struggles. It's draining, it is frustrating, it is after a long day's work, all you coming home to is dealing with that, and it just gets so frustrating. So I'd have to say right now, at the point in my life, that is one of the biggest challenges, dealing with the potty training issue and always having to make sure that Spencer is in an environment that he's going to be safe and he can't get harmed. The reward, and I probably don't see it as a reward right now, is he gives the best hugs and kisses that any of my children give. And for probably the last 6 months, he is completely obsessed with me. He is daddy's little boy and does not want to have anything to do with my wife or anybody else. So I cannot maneuver around my house without him attached to my hip and him saying, "Dad, what are you doing?" over and over and over. So even though I think it doesn't seem like a reward, I think that is a pretty big reward, because I couldn't wait to have a son, and he was my first and only son. And I guess that's what boys do when they have a dad, right?
I love that. Thank you, Beau. Mike, what are your thoughts?
I'd kind of like to echo some of what Beau said. We're a family of 7, 4 with disabilities, 3 require wheelchairs. When we load up to go take a trip somewhere, it's a logistical feat. And we take 2 vehicles everywhere we go. So we have an upcoming vacation. I always tell my wife, it's so much work to go on a vacation. So yeah, you do tend to get very comfortable at home. And we try to invite friends and family here rather than, making the trip there for some of the same reasons. One of my children, you have to be a helicopter above him. You have to follow him around and can't leave him unattended. The challenges every day, I would say, is logistics every day, coordination between my wife and I, and communication on what's been done, what needs to be done, what meds have been given, what hadn't been given, what appointments are upcoming. It's really a lot of moving pieces in this household. And as far as rewards, when I walk in my daughter's room and she says hug, when I walk in my 7-year-old's room and he runs to give you a hug, the 6-year-old that says, "You're the best dad ever," and the 5-year-old that just bounces up and down in the bed when he hears you. You know, those are the rewards I like.
Thank you, Mike. It sounds like you've got quite the gang at your house, and it sounds like it's always a party. I see, Beau, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to just chime in with a little challenge that actually presented itself this morning, just so you can have an idea of what we deal with. So Spencer decided that he wanted to come hang out with my wife and I at 4:30 this morning, in the morning. And then by 4:45, he was in the shower, just taking a shower. And then by 5 o'clock, he had his police uniform costume on. And I think he had put me in jail 5 times and written me about 10 tickets. And this is all before 6 o'clock in the morning. And, you know, we have to go to work. So those are some challenges to the sleeping issues. But, you know, we're joking around about it. And I guess it's about perspective, and it actually can be a reward as well. So I just thought I'd share that little interesting tidbit about this morning. And if I look tired, I apologize.
Did you get hugs while you were also getting arrested?
Oh, I got hugs, I got kisses, I got everything that I wasn't looking for at 5 in the morning. I just needed coffee.
Probably some more sleep too.
Yes.
Thank you, Beau, for that story. Our next question is, do you feel like it's harder to relate to other dads because of your child's or even your disability? Harlan, would you like to go first?
In our house, everyone has a disability. All of us are blind or legally blind. And so one of our biggest issues that we're always battling with is transportation. And a lot of times in talking with other dads and trying to relate, that's one of the factors that doesn't really get considered very much. If my daughter wants to go and do this or do that, a lot of times we can't do it because the cost of trying to manage the transportation, like back and forth on a daily basis, just makes the activity unaccessible. And so I think a lot of times issues like that related to transportation or related to certain accommodations that we or our daughter might need in order to participate in particular events or activities don't really get communicated or related to parents of children without disabilities, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. But do you find that it's easier to instill a sense of disability pride in your household because everyone has disabilities?
Yes, to a point. To a point, like I said, we always try to promote our daughter to be self-sufficient and to have self-confidence, but there's a lot that goes on out in the world with her peers and other adults and uh, even within the environment that affect the way that she relates and understands her own disability. So there's a lot of give and take.
Thank you, Harlan. Mike, I'm going to ask you to go next.
I think the hardest thing to relate with is when you have a child who you may not see their disability, and the father that you're with thinks your child may have more abilities than they do, and you have to explain that to them. Or the child is far exceeding what he should be doing, and you have to explain to him that they shouldn't be doing that. Other than that, I don't really have that much difficulty. With other dads, it's often a learning experience for both me and them, their perceptions and my perceptions, and typically meeting a middle ground, education wise for both of us sometimes.
Thank you, Mike. Rashad?
Sometimes it's harder to relate, sometimes it's not. I mean, as fathers, we are connected by love for our child, so that opens up a lot of the understanding. When dealing with talking to other parents of children who have disabilities, sometimes it's a little bit more comforting because you have relief knowing that you're not on the island by yourself, and that many people can relate, just like how we're talking now. Sometimes I may go somewhere, the expectations when they see an outburst of behavior and they don't have make the comprehension that there may be a developmental disability in the process. Sometimes you may get a strange look or whatever the case may be. But with that being said, as a parent of a child with a disability, I've gone places where I've seen similar outbursts and I'm able to relate and give another parent relief, saying, hey, you don't have to explain anything. I have a child on the spectrum too. And you can just see a sigh of relief where a person like, oh, thank you, God. I don't have to explain what's going on. And it kind of, like I said, it works both ways. We're all connected by love for our child, but sometimes there's relief when, you're in an environment where people understand what's going on. You don't have to try to defend or try to make excuses for a behavior that may not seem exemplified in public.
Thank you, Rashad. And Beau?
I don't really have that much to add to what the other gentlemen have said. I don't have a problem relating with other dads. Maybe it is just them understanding where Spencer is in his life at that point. I guess for an example, I had a friend contact me the other day saying, hey, we're going to go fishing. I want you to bring Spencer. Well, that's not going to work out too well. He'll probably throw all the fishing poles overboard. We're going to be going out in the Gulf. I just don't see that, maybe a typical 6-year-old would be okay doing that, or going hunting and sitting in a stand, just explaining to them, making them see the other side of the equation, that, you've got to have that patience and it's going to take some time. He'll be able to do those things, but it may just take a few more years. But to kind of talk about what Rashard was saying, I think it has helped me to relate to other parents who also have children with disabilities, because, it's too often that we're more found in an environment where we are being judged than placed in an environment when we're not being judged. And when we're in those environments like here today, where we're comfortable and we know that if our children were sitting on our lap in this Zoom and doing something, having some behavioral issues, or we would not be judged. And that's one of the things that being a father of a child with Down syndrome has taught me, is to have a little bit more understanding when I see other parents going through those types of situations, because we've all been there. And we've all gotten the stares and the looks, and I haven't had any had to confront anybody yet, but it's just the cards that we've been dealt, and I think that's a huge part of this, is just being able to have that understanding for other parents.
Thank you, Beau. I actually asked this question because of a conversation I had with my own father a couple weeks ago. I was talking to him about this panel, and I asked him, I said, what questions would you ask the other dads if you had the opportunity? And it was this question, because he talked about how, okay, so you're hanging out with other dads, maybe you're talking about extracurricular activities, and this other dad says, oh, well, my son plays football or my daughter plays volleyball, and I'm very disabled. I can't do any of those things, right? And so it's like, I think he was trying to relay to me that sometimes it was difficult because family activities or even extracurricular activities aren't necessarily the same all the time. And sometimes that is, the casual conversation that you have with other dads, but it was really reminiscent of just kind of my experiences as a person with a disability relating to my own peers of what do you talk about when your life experiences are so different just because of something like disability that's so inherent to who you are and how your family functions. So thank you guys for your perspectives. So our next question is, what opportunities would you like to see available for your child in the future that aren't necessarily available now? Mike, I'm going to ask you to go first.
Well, I have some children with some pretty severe disabilities that are going to be, they're going to be very limited for the remainder of their lives. And, we look for the simple things, accessible playgrounds, places where they could go, splash pads that they can actually get to and be on, that sort of thing. Even still, even just going to my neighborhood swimming pool here, I can't get the wheelchair there. I have to pick the wheelchair up over the curb to get it there, believe it or not. And they just spent tens of thousands of dollars redoing the pool. And I'm like, you could have spent a few $100s to do a curb cut, So, as far, that's the kind of things that I hope that just overall accessibility and is improved for things that they enjoy doing, where they can get to and enjoy their time there. It's so limited that it shouldn't be so difficult.
Thank you, Mike. Rashad?
I agree with Mike. I just think about, like just more accessibility for an sensitive, friendly environment. Say, for example, Six Flags. When you take your child to that amusement park, the expectation is high for children in general. And then you don't want one child to be robbed of the opportunity to be able to participate in something due to the fact that their exceptionality may not, underqualify them, whatever the case may be. But something that can be an equivalent where they can have just as much of an enjoyment, where if they don't get an opportunity to attend this particular amusement park, there is something of entertainment where they can take place.
Harlan?
The big thing right now probably for us would be better disability skills training within our local school systems, and more opportunities for children with disabilities to participate in the social and extracurricular activities that are sponsored by the schools and the community. A lot of times it's easy for children with exceptionality to kind of get left out of those activities because of accessibility problems. And in the future, I would really like to see some improvements in those areas.
Thank you, Harlan. And lastly, Beau?
More inclusive activities, extracurricular activities, better educational opportunities, and I think employment opportunities. That's that's what I'm hoping. And you're seeing a lot of changes over the last few years because, you know, we have some trailblazers in this state that are paving the way for our children and doing a tremendous job. And we've got to pick up the torch and keep carrying it to create better opportunities in those areas for them. And at least I have a few more years till we get to a point where he'll be working, but I'm hoping, you know, really that, you know, by the time that he'll be able to be employable and a productive citizen when he becomes an adult.
Thank you. And we actually have a couple of comments in the Q&A. One of them that sticks out to me is from Lynette Fontenot, who says, "My dad worked tirelessly to modify equipment in our lives so we could do everything everyone else did and more. He was very patient with me. He was responsible for making things possible for me to succeed. I admire all of you for speaking today. God bless you." And I think that's such a cool sentiment. I remember for a while, I was using a non-invasive ventilator 24/7. Ventilators were not meant for ambulatory patients. So they're like this big, heavy machine, and there was no rolling cart for it. So I couldn't get around the house with it. And I distinctly remember my dad made this rolling cart out of PVC pipe and like wood that he had in the shed outside, right? But it was such a cool thing because that was one way for us to relate and connect, because he's a sports guy. He likes to go outside and do things. Otherwise, he really likes World of Warcraft, none of which are interests that I share. But that was one way for us to connect. He made this for me. We got to collaborate on what this would look like and how it'd be functional. And it allowed me to participate in family activities better. Have you guys have any experiences of DIYing things or modifying things in your home for your children as well?
I've done my now 7-year-old. He's quite the challenge. We had a bunk bed in his room, and you basically use the upper bunk. There's no ladders on the bunk to the upper bunk. Use the upper bunk for storage of supplies. And one day I come in and he's sitting on the top bunk, and he couldn't figure out how to get down. And the only way he could get up there was to climb the tubing. So I'm like, this is not going to work. So I took everything off the top bunk, the mattress off, all the slats off. So there was nothing left but the tube frame. And I'm like, okay, he's fine now. And go out of the room, and I come back in, and he's sitting on the top corner, up in the corner of the room on top of the tubing. And he climbed up there and, couldn't get himself down. And I'm like, I can't have him climbing, 6 feet off the floor. So disassembled the bunk bed and, put the mattress on the floor until we worked out something different. And his dresser had notches in the drawers for handles. And the TV was mounted on the wall above. And I go in, and he's on top of the dresser that has latches where you can't open the drawers. He used those notches to climb up onto the top of the dresser and was messing with the TV screen. So I took that dresser out and put another dresser in there that had flat front with a little pull. And that worked for a while. And it, of course, had safety cables to the wall. And every once in a while, you would hear him in there rocking the dresser. And one day I'm in the living room and I hear boom, and it just clicked what it was in my head. And I jumped up and I ran in there, and he was standing in the middle of his room with this look of shock on his face. Well, he had rocked that thing so many times that it had broke the cable, the little cable tie, that safety cable. So that now he has no dresser in his room to climb on, no bed with a frame that he can climb off the floor. He does have a swing in his room that I put a swing in there attached to the ceiling. So he's often swinging or spinning in that swing. But yeah, you often find yourself doing strange things for your child. I've modified wheelchairs like so that they work. Well, actually, I've remodified my wheelchair ramp so that the wheelchairs, they would get caught coming up and down the wheelchair, and I had the a little DIY installation on the sides, so now they don't get stuck there. So yeah, you just tend to do whatever you have to do for your kids, I guess.
Mike, I just want to chime in and tell you that I think, you're talking about your 7-year-old, but that sounds like pretty much a typical 7-year-old boy. That's just boys being boys, because I can tell you that Spencer is the same way. He will destroy his entire room, and I think they're just curious. They're active. They like to climb. They like to do fun things. So I was laughing and giggling the whole time you were describing it, but because I've been there with you.
Thank you all. We have another question from Jim Mitchell, and he asked about what it's like to introduce your child to adults with their disability or people who look like them. Harlan, have you had any experiences with this?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
So Jim Mitchell asked what it's like to introduce your child to adults with disabilities similar to theirs or people who look like them.
Oh, yes. Excuse me. This is something I've had a lot of experience with. We're affiliated with a number of different disability related organizations in the community, and specific to blindness would be the Affiliated Blind of Louisiana or the National Federation of the Blind. And so my daughter has met a lot of adults through those programs. She has participated in the Braille Enrichment for Literacy and Learning summer camps in Ruston, where she's had blind role models, and she participates with our Acadiana chapter of the Affiliated Blind and with the training center here. And she attended her first Affiliated Blind of Louisiana when she was a month old, and she's been to every state convention since. And so she has blind and visually impaired adult role models and acquaintances from all over the state. And she's never met a stranger.
I've been really concerned for a very, very long time that Carly will one day become our worldwide tyrant, because I do believe she's going to take over the world one day. Rashad, I'd love to hear your perspective on this question about what it's like to introduce your child to maybe an adult with a disability like them.
Okay. My son, he was more receptive than I thought. I remember one time he's real reserved. He's not real big on hugging or anything along those lines. And we took him to a facility in Shreveport. I don't know if you're familiar with, called Holy Angels. And he went there and see how someone offered him a hug, and he gave them a hug, much to my shock. And with that being said, he was very receptive, and it's almost as if he felt comfortable being in that environment. And it was eye-opening for me as a parent. It was really eye-opening for me as a parent how receptive he was, as opposed to how I've seen him reserved in so many other public settings.
Mike, Beau, do you have anything to add?
We don't have any problems in this area. Spencer is very much a social child, and he's been exposed from a very young age to a variety of ages of individuals with Down syndrome. So a lot of the older adults know who he is just through our various events that we put on. And so when they see him, they get excited. And sometimes he'll always go and run up to people and give them a hug. So that's not something that that's not an area we're struggling with, the social aspect, because he wants to be everybody's friend and probably, mayor one day or something.
Thank you. And we also have a comment from Charlie Michelle in the Q&A from Bayouland, who is helping families. And he says, "Good afternoon, gentlemen. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and for showing to everyone watching that dads are an important part of our children's lives. We are often overlooked as a resource for our children, i.e. ignored by the school system, etc. It's good to see that there are many of us who do whatever it takes." So our last question for today is, what would you like other people to know about being a dad of a child with a disability? And Mike, I'm going to ask you to go first.
I'm in a unique position because I chose that route. A lot of parents, that's not a choice. And, I often, remind them when, comments are made to me that, I don't know how you do it sort of thing. I not in a spiteful way, but I'd just like to let them know it could be you. You could be the parent of a child with disabilities. And that just opens their eyes perspective wise, I think, and makes them more aware. Like I said, we're in this by choice. So I can't speak to, as if I was a birth parent of a child with disabilities, but I am a parent of children with disabilities. But it could happen. It's like a roll of the dice. If you're going to roll doubles, you could have a child with disabilities. That's the way it really looks, and
You're on mute, Mike. You're on mute.
oh, I'm sorry, I hit the button. I don't know where I hit it at.
No worries.
But I think it's important that everybody's aware, of how fragile life is, how quickly, you could be a parent of a child with disabilities as easily as you could be a parent of a child without disabilities.
I think you bring up a great point about how fragile life can be, because I know I hear, like, for new parents a lot of times, like, everything will be fine as long as your child is happy and healthy. But what happens when your child isn't healthy, or if your child is disabled? I know that I think a lot of people underestimate, though, how disability can actually strengthen relationships. I know out of all of my peers, my non-disabled peers, I probably have the best relationship with my parents, but that's because of my chronic illness and because we spent so many nights in hospitals together, right? Just surviving off of the bare minimum, but clinging to each other because of that. So Rashad, what is your take on this question?
You might repeat the question one more time, just make sure I do answer correctly.
Absolutely. What would you like other people to know about what it's like to be a dad of a child with a disability?
Well, I agree with what Mike said. It's almost like rolling the dice. I mean, I personally believe that we were chosen as the parents of children with disabilities, whether it was by choice or whether it was by birth. We are equipped for this because it takes a special kind of person. It takes special patience. It takes understanding, and I feel that it helps us to become better people just due to the fact that we have a chance to have a contribution to our children's lives as well. I just believe it's a call. Not everyone can answer to it, but those of us who have answered to that call, it's rewarding to see that we're able to bring great productivity out of it. I just believe it's a personal call.
Thank you so much. Harlan?
Yes. Well, I think it's great to be the parent of a child with a disability. A lot of the things that everyone else has said, including you, are very true. We face a lot of extra challenges in our role as parents of a child with a disability, but we also have a lot of additional benefits. I do feel like the nature of the disability brings us closer in a lot of ways. And I believe that we as a family have to learn how to work together to come up with new ideas, to come up with new solutions, to really share in the experience together in order to overcome some of those challenges. And I think that being the parent of a child with a disability is a blessing.
I think you touched on a really great point about that interdependence that brings you closer together. Because I know whenever a child is growing up, obviously you're dependent on your parents, but with a child with a disability, you have that interdependence long-term and sometimes for your whole entire life. And so it builds such a unique relationship because it's a different type of dependence and interdependence. It happens with disability and it's inherent and it's natural, but it's definitely not something that there's a roadmap or how to book on. Beau, I would love to hear your thoughts on this question.
Well, generally speaking, I think being a parent is probably one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life, because you have these expectations that, oh, I'm going to be this type of parent, my child is going to act this type of way, and then my girls proved that to me real quick that I am completely wrong, and threw me for a loop, and it's been challenging. And then you add Spencer to the mix and his disability, and I was not one of those people who chose to do it like Mike, and that his birth was devastating to me, and that entire day it was just rough. I didn't hold him. I didn't want anything to do with him, and it was relying on other dads who have children with Down syndrome to connect with them to get me out of that slump, and then turn that into motivation to want to do better things for Spencer. So it's a role. I have to say that being a father of a child with a disability is a roller coaster, because there are very tough moments that really challenge every ounce in your body, and make you struggle. But those tough moments are far outweighed by so many moments of joy. And there's so many positive things that have come into my life because of Spencer. His two sisters are his best therapists. Our family has gotten so close because of him. I don't think we'd be where we're at now if it wasn't for Spencer. And I tell people all the time that I have met some of the most unbelievable people in my life because of Spencer, that I would not even know if it weren't for him being born. And just that is a gift that I can, it just amazes me. The places that he has taken me that I wouldn't be at without him. So I wouldn't be sitting here with you guys if he wasn't here. So I really appreciate the opportunity to be on this panel with these fellow awesome dads.
Great comments to close out our panel with. Thank you for that, Beau. I just wanted to thank everyone for being here and being open and sharing your experiences. I know I've learned a lot. I'm sure all of our attendees have learned a lot from your experiences. So thank you for everyone for attending, and a huge thank you for our panelists for having this discussion. And that actually closes out day 3 of our GOTA conference. So we shall see everyone tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Lillian. Bye, everyone.